is incredibly subjective and it depends on who you ask. But he just clicked on my video. So what do I think? Is Longlegs overhyped? No. Wasn't my experience anyway. Written and directed by Osgood Perkins, the movie follows FBI agent Lee Harker, who uncovers a series of occult clues that she must solve in order to end Longlegs' killing spree. Longlegs had one of the best marketing campaigns any movie has received in recent memory. It quickly became one of my most anticipated movies for the rest of the year. I saw the movie, and I don't really know how else to word it other than it didn't disappoint. With a movie like Longlegs, where the hype surrounding it has admittedly reached fever pitch, I'm sure that the movie's not going to be for everyone. And that's okay. If you don't like the movie, that's absolutely fine. But in terms of my own personal experience with it, here's what I took away from it. Osgood Perkins creates a vibe, an atmosphere that feels heavy and uneasy. It's immediately apparent when the movie begins, but to be able to sustain that from beginning to end, that's a challenge. But he did it. Through the use of good solid filmmaking, through editing, pacing, music and an engaging screenplay, he did it. I can count on one hand the amount of horror movies that I have seen in the past 6-7 years that accomplished this with this kind of success. There are a few jump scares in the movie, but they are not cheap. There's an absolutely genius one at the very start. It's so simple, but it completely messed with my head after. The narrative by nature is morbid. Even the times when the movie encourages you to laugh, I never felt comfortable doing so. Like, it just didn't feel natural for me to respond that way to what was going on. I just felt like the movie sat me down and it really made me feel like I was engaging in a significantly consequential experience. It was physical. I actually got like a little lightheaded when the movie was over, and that does not happen as much as I would like. But to be able to sustain this level of fear, this level of unease, it's reflective of the story itself. And it's a tight, engaging one at that. The atmosphere feels like it's naturally emanating from such a dark place, and that's why it worked. Perkins understood exactly the kind of atmosphere what the story required, so he made it. And again, it worked. Maika Monroe is a fab actress. Everything I have seen her in, going back to It Follows, she's usually a standout. She effortlessly led this movie. Harker is clearly someone of immense focus. She has a minuscule social circle she cares about, but you can clearly tell that there is something off about her. Monroe, being present and cognizant towards the characters in her life and the reactions to everything happening around her, came across in every scene. The movie does an exceptional job at putting you in her headspace and how it gradually unravels, but it would not have worked had Maika Monroe not sold it. But she did. She succeeded, and I am thrilled to see her getting more recognition. Blair Underwood and Alicia Witt are also excellent. Now, the less I say about Nicolas Cage, the better. But what really surprised me with the acting in Longlegs are the actors that have less screen time. Some literally show up for one scene. There's one that isn't even seen, but heard. Every single performance was on point. Every single one of them made an impression. Every single one of them contributed to the film's central dread-inducing framework. The main cast are great, but don't sleep on those who are in it for less time. You'll be very surprised at how quickly and how much you can resonate with a viewer in very little time, folks. Folks, if you ask me, when it comes to the general output of horror movies, it's either occasionally really good or generally pretty bad. More often than not, in some form, it's the latter. But it's not at all often that we get to experience something that's consistently eerie, continually getting under one's skin through means that are simple and complex. With Longlegs, as I said, it's a physical, filmic experience where you're scanning the imagery. Things appear in the background of certain shots and now you're kept on your toes. Not only am I uncomfortable, but I am scared. The movie is dealing with a kind of threat that you cannot 100% comprehend. But I was also relieved that the FBI procedural aspect of it was also done really well, because it's just as interesting watching Maika Monroe as Lee Harker solving these clues, these letters that Longlegs sends. With regards to imagery Longlegs has produced, no spoilers, these images are taken from the marketing, this one. It's so simple, but it sticks. How about this one? Again, simple, but so effective. Couple this image with the father's haunting voiceover, it is so good.
It's my daughter. I gotta be quiet.
Sir, can you stay on the line with me?
But it's not my daughter.
Again, folks, I was saying it earlier. This is the performance I was talking about where the guy is not seen, but he can be heard. But it's chilling. It's so effective. Another reason why I feel like Longlegs is resonating with people is that we haven't had a memorable serial killer thriller in a very long time. Serial killers have been done to death. It's easily one of the most painfully oversaturated markets in filmic storytelling. Practically bled dry at this point. But what ultimately must be considered is this. Who's approaching this? Who's wielding the concept? Who's behind the camera? These are the questions that I came away with after seeing what Oz Perkins created here. Even the most redundant, most done-to-death premise can still be made interesting depending on the director and the script. Presentation and execution are fucking everything. They're not the limiting factor, they're the defining factor. One claim that I've seen about Longlegs is that it's one of the scariest movies of the decade. You would have put that question to me, I would currently, subject to change, say that it's Skinamarink. But that's just me. The thing with Longlegs is that it's a matter of hunger. We are naturally going to get very hungry for something we want more of. And what we want more of doesn't come along very often with horror. What Longlegs has to offer is satiating. It's real, sustained fear, dread, and tension that messes with you. There are elements in this movie that could have come across so OTT and laughable that could have fallen flat on its ass. But Oz Perkins treaded along that tightrope between horror and comedy so delicately. He creates an edgy but slightly disorienting aura that consistently weighs on you. And then again, no spoilers, he hits you with an ending that leaves you with a certain feeling, even after you've left the cinema. Is Longlegs one of the scariest movies of the decade? That question does not interest me as much as this more simple one. Did it disappoint? To that, I would say no. And that's plenty. Frequency of output definitely plays a role here. If most horror movies were at the standard of Mike Flanagan's resume or Longlegs, Longlegs probably wouldn't be standing out so much, but it is. This kind of command over the genre, using the genre to tell a story that favours atmosphere and characters over VFX and jump scares. How often do we get it? Scratch that, better question. How often do we get it at this level? Not often enough. Again, there's a reason why people have been eating this movie up. Like, in terms of issues, Longlegs has very few. Even so, they're nitpicks at best. It does get a little convoluted here and there, but nothing that ever broke immersion and took me out. I expected a little bit of that, knowing the occult played a part in the narrative, but in the end, Longlegs is one of the best serial killer thrillers I have ever seen. It's a standout piece of filmmaking in 2024. It's a haunting piece of original horror storytelling, and it cements Osgood Perkins as an astute name of the genre. Mar Uckle Square. No, I don't think that Longlegs is overhyped, because I loved it. Míle buíochas, slán libh.